Hey cool kids, this week I thought I'd do something a little different and do a storytime video. I've seen a lot of other artists do videos like this where they'll tell a story over Speedpaint, and honestly I do have a lot of stories I want to tell, but I haven't really done one yet because I'm kind of holding out for when I'm a little more competent at animating. But I figured I'd tell the story while it's still fresh in my mind. So without further ado, let me tell you about this move. So as I've mentioned several times before, I moved at the end of June, and moving's never fun. I've moved somewhere around 15 times in my 21 years of life, so you'd think I'd be a pro by now, but this move was basically doomed from the start. For a little backstory, I live in a big family. I've got 6 siblings, 5 of who still live with me, and 2 whole parents, so it's already hard enough to find a space big enough to accommodate all of us, which is why we were pretty lucky to find our old house. It was a 5-bedroom within walking distance from my work and all of my siblings' schools, and a bunch of my friends lived in the neighborhood. Plus, on top of everything, our landlord told us he had no plans of selling the house at all, so we could totally stay there for at least the next 3 years, which would have been great because, like I said, my family moves a lot. We've basically moved about once a year since 2008, so it would be nice to have a place to stay for at least a little while. Keep in mind, we moved into that house in October 2015, and in December of 2016, our landlord comes up to us and tells us he's moving back to Scotland, and we're like, oh, cool, have fun with that, I guess. And he's like, yeah, so anyway, that means I have to sell the house. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, shame how these things happen, but you know how it is. And we're like, no, you promised us 3 years. A big reason why we chose this house is because you said we could stay here for 3 years. And he basically got cold feet about the whole selling the house thing. It's like, well, I mean, I'm not totally committed to this move. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to price the house pretty high. And if it doesn't sell in a month, I'll take it off the market. And since we really didn't have much of a choice in the matter, we agreed. And then we got to spend the rest of our holiday season dealing with people rifling through our house, deciding whether or not it was worth the ridiculously high price tag. And it wasn't, so no one bought it, and we moved on with our lives. Then again in March, our landlord decides he's gonna sell the house, which, March was an even worse month to decide to do this than December, because half my siblings have birthdays in March. My little sister had to cancel her party because we were too busy preparing the house for showings, and then landlord does the same thing where he shows the house for limited time only, with a really high price, no one bites, and he tells us that for realsies, he promises this time he's not gonna sell the house after this, and then we're like, yeah, sure, and big surprise, he comes back in late April and says, okay guys, so I've got an offer for the house, but it's pretty low, so I'm gonna put the house back on the market to see if I can get any higher prices, but either way, you guys have to be out by July 1st. And we're like, great, thanks. And he couldn't have chosen worse timing, because our town's been in a bit of a housing crisis for a while now, but it's gotten really bad this spring. It's sort of a combination of hordes of people just moving into our town for no good reason, because there's no infrastructure here for a big population. There aren't any jobs. Why are they coming here? And then because of this, all the houses are priced ridiculously high, way past their value, because that's never had bad consequences before. And so that means that finding a rental within a reasonable price range is pretty much impossible. So we weren't even sure if we'd have a place to live until about 2 weeks before we moved out. Thankfully, we did find a place in our price range, although it's only 4 bedrooms and quite a bit smaller than our old house, so that meant we had to downsize quite a bit, and it also meant deciding on rooms was a bit of a struggle. The basic layout of the house is that there's a big bedroom with a fireplace on the lower level, and then 2 smaller bedrooms on the top, and then the master's as well upstairs. The original plan was that my parents would take the master, and then because she's homeschooled and she needs her space, my little sister Molly would get her own room upstairs, and then my brothers would share the other upstairs room because they're both really young and need to be near my parents, which left the fireplace room for my sisters Sam and Em, and that meant I didn't have a place to sleep. And originally my parents joked that there was a walk-in closet I could sleep in, and I could have my own room and everything, and I was like, yeah, sure, if you guys lower my rent so I can actually afford to move out, I'll sleep wherever you want. And they were like, change of plans. We take the fireplace room and convert the family room into a half playroom, half bedroom for the boys, and then Molly keeps her room, and Sam and Em get one in the upstairs room, and Melody gets the master's and stops complaining about her rent. And I was fine with that, so I figured that was done and we'd move on. So this finally brings us to the actual move. Like I think I mentioned in my 10-minute challenge video, I'd requested that Saturday off, and it also happened to be Canada Day, so a lot of my coworkers had requested time off, including one of my coworkers, Lisa, who didn't get the time off, and she'd specifically requested it so she could go visit her husband she hadn't seen in like 3 months, so sorry, Lisa. I'd actually initially planned to switch the day off with Lisa because I figured, we'll probably be done moving by Saturday. I don't really need that day off, but I'm glad I didn't. Because let me tell you, we were not done by Saturday. The original plan was that we'd get the moving truck on Thursday and bring it back Saturday morning, and I knew I was going to be picking up the truck with my dad, but we'd had it planned that we were going to pick it up at 2. And because Thursday, Friday are already my day off, I thought it'd be safe to stay up until like 3 a.m. packing because your girl put most of her packing off until the last minute, as one does. And then my mom wakes me up at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning to tell me that the truck depot called and the moving truck is there right now. And if we don't pick it up in the next hour, they're going to give it to someone else. So I have to get ready real quick to go out with my dad so we can go pick it up. And before we go, my dad moves my mom's van out of the driveway so we'd have somewhere to park the truck. And he realizes my mom's van is leaking oil, like everywhere. And so after we get the truck, he's going to have to take it to get the van fixed. But first, we have to get the truck. So we go to the place, go to rent the truck, and apparently something got messed up somewhere along the line because they had the rentals set up as an out-of-town move, even though, we're not moving that far away. It's like a 10-minute drive from my old house to the new one, but because it's technically a different town, it had been reserved as out of town, so the manager of the truck place, this really pleasant old man, honestly, he had to come out and fix the reservation so we wouldn't have to pay the long distance cost, and he was really nice about it. He even told us we could keep the truck an extra day because we were originally supposed to have the truck back on Saturday, but because it was Canada Day, no one was going to be in anyway, so we could keep it the extra day and just return it Sunday. And we're like, oh, that's really nice of you, but surely we'll have this all done by Saturday. But, thank you for letting us know, sir. We'll keep that in mind. So we take the truck back to our house, and my parents go to drop off my mom's van, and then that leaves us with basically 2 vehicles. We technically also have my dad's work truck, but he's not supposed to use that outside of work. So, for transportation, we had the moving truck, and then we had my itty-bitty car, which not everyone would fit in, so that made it really hard to transport everyone to and from the new and old house, especially because we also had movers with us. Sort of. My family didn't used to use movers, but since we've moved to Canada, we don't really have as much family up here as we did in the States, and my dad can't lift like he used to, so we've had to hire movers the last couple of moves, mostly to help out with our really heavy furniture. But the last couple of movers, they were honestly awful. The move before this one, the movers took, I kid you not, 45 minutes to load our trampoline into the truck, mainly because they were just bumbling around. They ended up scraping the walls when they were moving the furniture. And then, before we had even finished unloading our first truckload, they left because they had to go work on their next job and go mess that one up too. And it's oh, thanks for that. So my dad was done with professional movers, and he decided instead he was going to hire one of his friend's son and then his friend's son's friends because, literally, no one could be worse than the last movers we had, and hiring a bunch of teens to move around your furniture is a lot cheaper than hiring quote-unquote professionals. And the teens did a fine job, but apparently they also all went to my sister Sam's school, so she hung around my room and refused to go out because she was afraid that they might, try to talk to her if she bumped into one of them, and, can't risk that. And the teens ended up having to stay a lot longer than they should have because I guess somewhere along the line everything got really disorganized, and I'm not really sure what happened because I wasn't in charge of dealing with furniture, but I guess my dad had planned that my little sister Molly would help him stage the furniture so it'd be easier to move into the truck, but then my mom had also planned to have Molly help her pack the kitchen, so my dad was like, okay, I'll have Sam help me, but then Sam couldn't help because she couldn't schedule the time off work for the entire time we were moving, and so she had to go to work. And so the movers had to spend a lot of time that they shouldn't just moving furniture back and forth while my dad tried to figure out what we were doing. So Thursday ends. We had originally planned to have everything except essentials in the new house by this point, but we don't, so that means Friday we're going to have to really push to get this done. And there's a little hitch in this plan that my parents had scheduled the cable guy to come set up the cable in our new house on Friday morning because they'd figured, by this point pretty much everything would be moved over and it'd just be about organizing furniture and unpacking boxes and all that. And of course we weren't at that point yet, but my mom still had to hang around the new house to wait for the cable guy to show up instead of catching up on packing the old house. And while at the new house, my mom discovered that the place was absolutely filthy. And it wasn't even, the movers tracked a bit of dirt in when they were taking everything in. You know how it goes, filthy. It was I don't even think the old owners cleaned at all filthy. There was still pasta and this mysterious sticky substance stuck inside the cabinets. And there were popsicle wrappers in the master's bathroom medicine cabinet for some unknown reason. And I guess the previous owners had claimed they had cleaned the carpets before we moved in, but I don't buy that at all because there were a bunch of spots and weird stains on the carpet, and on top of that, absolutely everything was covered in dog hair. And then with all this, I guess my dad had instructed the teens to just move all the furniture into the garage and we'd deal with it later for some reason instead of putting it upstairs. And I've had this happen to me before where he's done this and all my stuff's ended up buried under boxes. And I did not want to deal with that again, so my mom and I had to move all the heavy furniture up the stairs and into my room. And by this point, my mom and I were both so exhausted and sore from all this moving. My abs ached of all the muscles in my body to be sore. But we really did not want to have to deal with the furniture being buried and not being able to get to it. So we got all the furniture and all of the mattresses moved upstairs, which brought us to our next problem. Emmy and Sam's room was not going to be big enough for all their furniture, plus their bunk bed, and so that brought the whole room discussion back up, and my parents were like, well, maybe Em and Sam can have the masters, and we'll give Melody the smaller room, and I was like, yeah, sure, if you lower my rent so I can move out. And my parents were like, look, Em, Sam, you guys can just keep some of your furniture downstairs in the boys' room, that's fine. And it's do I feel bad about that? Kinda, but masters had us a jetted bathtub. Jetted bathtub, come on. So Friday comes around and we still don't have everything moved out of our old house, but we're getting there. The last things we have to do are the kitchen, which should have been done by Friday, and the garage, which was supposed to be done a week ago, so we decide to divide up the labor. Mom and I deal with the kitchen, and Dad and Molly work on the garage, and the little three hang out outside because they don't really have anything to do inside, and that's the only place where they want to be in the way. And then Sam has to go work at her actual job. I was in charge of packing all our food, and oh my god, it was so gross. We had stuff that expired in 2009. We moved to Canada in 2012, and we got rid of most of our food then, so I don't even know how some of that stuff didn't end up in the pantry. But we finally got everything moved out, just a day behind schedule, and we were all ridiculously sore and exhausted, but we couldn't stop yet because we had to hand over the keys to the landlord on Sunday, so we needed to get everything spick and span. So we go into full cleaning mode. Sam's washing walls, Mom's dealing with floors, I'm scrubbing dirt out of places I didn't know dirt could even exist. My sisters and I ended up heading back around 7 so we could help our dad unload the truck, but my mom stayed behind until at least 1 a.m. just cleaning everything. Now, I wasn't around for this next event because I worked Sunday, but I guess my parents went to the old house to hand over the keys to the owner, and it didn't go well, to say the least. I guess the second they got in the door, the landlord and his wife started nitpicking absolutely everything. And there were some complaints I could understand, they were upset that they saw ants, which is okay, that's not great, but it's summer, what do you expect? Literally every single house in the neighborhood's infested with ants. There was a newsletter going around about it, and when we moved into the house, it was infested with spiders. Which would you rather have? Ants or spiders? But they were also going off about the dumbest things, oh my god, why is the ceiling fan dusty? And it's oh, you mean the broken ceiling fan? The one you swore you were going to replace before you even moved in? That one. And then they started yelling at my mom because there was some dirt on the outside of the upstairs windows. the outside. Like, oh, sorry, let me just whip out my scaffolding so I can scrub the outside of these windows. And my dad had left by this point because he was getting heated, but my mom was still trying to get the security deposit back, so she'd picked up a cloth and had started scrubbing while the landlord's wife was just screaming at her, saying stuff like, oh my god, this is absolutely disgusting. We can't turn this house over. I don't know what kind of subhuman scum could live like this with like dusty ceiling fans. And my mom kind of reached this point of, you know what? Not worth it. Dropped her cloth and started storming off, and while she was leaving, the landlord's wife was still going ballistic. So my mom apparently, according to her, had turned around and said to her, shut up, I'll see you in court because I'm an American and I will sue you, before storming out. And it's like, Mom, you can't just say that to someone. The landlord texted my dad the next day whining because it was the holiday weekend, so they couldn't even get cleaners in to deep scrub everything, so he and his wife had to spend all of Canada Day weekend scrubbing it all by themselves. Wah. It's like, that's nice. We had to spend all of actual Canada Day moving out of the house you swore you weren't going to kick us out of. Have fun in Scotland, bro. I hope Nessie eats you. Bye. But at least the move's over, and underneath all the scum and dog hair, this house is actually okay, although there is a mysterious black liquid dripping from my ceiling into my jetted bathtub. I wish I was kidding, but we do have somewhere to live, at least until these landlords decide to sell the house out from under us.